you all who would have shared your experiences with Swami would have agreed with this statement that he's always had the last laugh. There's something about that. So I always remembered this particular statement. I don't know how many of you all would know this answer. How do you make God laugh? I had heard that you know the best way to make God laugh is to tell him your plans. And he would have a hearty laughter. And if you've known Swami, I think this has been my personal journey, my personal experience. Every time I've planned something, things have gone wrong. And he's had the last laugh. So I want to start the presentation with a very interesting story from Pittsburgh. So I've called this the beginning of the end, because till that time my ego was at the peak. And then that was the beginning of the end. So Pittsburgh, I went to Pittsburgh as a visiting scholar. I finished my oncology training at Tata Hospital, and then I went to Pittsburgh as a visiting scholar. This is a very interesting story. So I was giving a presentation at San Francisco in a conference, after which I was supposed to go to Pittsburgh. Now in this entire connect, I did not have a place to stay in Pittsburgh. So I had, through my friends, connected through a few people. Some of them who were my friends were Swami devotees. They connected me to another few people. And I was trying to get some guidance on where to stay in Pittsburgh. My stay at San Francisco was arranged by the hospital. I had to move to Pittsburgh. Now I did not plan it correctly. So there I was sitting in the San Francisco airport wondering confidently that now I'm heading to Pittsburgh. When I get a call from my family and they ask me, so has your arrangements at Pittsburgh been done? And I said, no. I said, I just remembered that I don't know where to stay over there. And I'm sitting at the San Francisco airport. But I've sent a mail to a couple of friends and they've all told me that they're going to guide me. Now that's where the story had stopped, and suddenly I get into an alarm attack that I have not made my arrangements for Pittsburgh. So in those couple of hours that I sat in San Francisco, I started making frantic calls to all the friends whom I've sent an email to saying, where am I going to be staying in Pittsburgh? So I did not have an arrangement for myself at Pittsburgh. So in my email change, which I had sent to a couple of friends, was Dr. Stanley Wetzler, a professor of medicine at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Science. He was one of the directors of the Brentwood Medical Center there. So there I had seen this mail where he had told me, he said, come over and we could plan something, I will guide you. So I had his number with me and I called him up and I said, Dr. Stan, could you please help me on this? And he said, yeah, all arrangements have been done for you. Why don't you come over tomorrow morning? I'm anyway got your flight itinerary, which he had asked me before in his email saying, when are you planning to come? And I told him I'm going to be arriving on this day. So he said, I have already had the plan, I'll be coming and picking you up. Now that was a surprise for me. I said, why would this man be wanting to come and pick me up? First of all, he doesn't know me. He has not known me anyway clearly. So why was this sudden interest in him to come and pick me up? He said, no, don't worry. And my flight was landing at 4 a.m. So strange as it would be, I went on thinking that is this a lucky strike or is there something more to the story? But there he was, that he came in the morning, because he said he would go very early in the morning for his rounds. He was a professor of medicine. He said he would go by about 5:30 for his morning rounds. So he said, anyway, it would not be much of an inconvenience. I will pick you up. At the airport, I saw Dr. Stan with a cap, love all, serve all. And that was a small sign for me that Swami again had done something for me. So there was Dr. Stan who came, picked me up, and told me that he's had a plan for me for the stay and everything, and the suspense had still not been opened up. So we reach his house, and then he tells me that I'm going to be staying in his house for the next coming weeks. And I was a little surprised because, I was looking for a dormitory where I could be hosted, and that's where I thought that we could plan my stay in as a visiting scholar. So there it was that he said, no, you will be staying in my house. And that made me all the more surprised, because his was a 100-year-old mansion, one of the most beautiful houses I've seen. I had no inhibition on staying there, but what kind of did not make me understand was what was it that he wanted me to stay there for. And then I asked him, how far is the university from his house? And he said, 40 miles. I said, 40 miles? And I said, how am I going to reach there? Because I have to go there every morning, come back by the evening. It doesn't seem practical. For me, it's like going from Bangalore to Mysore every day for my visit. So anyways, he said, no, all arrangements have been done for this. He says, you don't need to worry. So every time when I would ask him some question, he would say, don't worry, all arrangements are done. And I had no answer to this whole answer that he would give me. So there he was, and then we sat through the whole day, and then I was all the more curious to know from him what was the reason for the hospitality. And then we were chatting up, he was asking me about my work and everything, and then I put it more bluntly to him and I said, Dr. Stan, can you explain to me the hospitality, the reason for your hospitality? And he said, Vishal, he said, after you had sent me your request from the hospital, I had Googled your name. I checked on some research you have done on angiogenesis, on some cancer research thing. I really liked some of the topics. I thought there is more to talk to you about. And that's why I thought I should host you. So I said, oh, it is that way. So I thought this is going to be something about a scientific discussion that we both are going to do now. So there I was very excited. And then he brings out a file, a thick file that he had. And he said, Vishal, since you are here now, why don't you go through some of my reports and give me some advice on it? So I said, okay, sure. I said, here I am staying. I could spend some time looking into his reports. So there I was, like a typical person who's practicing surgical oncology, flipped through the reports, went through everything, and then I told him, I said, he had stage 4 colon cancer. It was a stage 4 colon cancer that had spread to the liver and the lungs, and it was in a fairly advanced stage. So at that point, I think he had been advised palliative chemotherapy, which is like just symptomatic care. He was given those chemotherapy which did not work, and he was asked very politely by his medical oncologist to go and give up his body in his house and spend the rest of the days peacefully. So it was at that point that, I went through flipping all the reports, and I had reached the last page, seeing a PET scan which shows all distant metastasis and palliative chemotherapy that has not worked, and symptomatic care being the last option. So there I was looking through all these reports, and I told him, I said, like a typical doctor, I went through the whole thing through oncology, closed the file, and I told him, I said, sir, I really don't think there's anything much we can do at this point. I said, they've tried the best of chemotherapy, they've tried FOLFOX, they've tried this, they've tried targeted therapy, they've tried cetuximab. I said, what more can you do now? There's nothing more you could do. And I closed the file and I gave it back to him. Now, Dr. Stan said to me, saying, Vishal, you don't even know how to read reports. And I was like a little hurt. I said, what do you mean by don't know how to read reports? I said, sir, I've gone through this entire thing. There is nothing more to read in this. He said, no, you have missed the point. I can't believe you have read these reports. You have missed the main point in this. I said, no, I went through the thing, and I knew the staging, I knew the PET scan reports, I knew the chemotherapy talks, I knew everything. And I said, I couldn't understand what was he trying to tell me by saying that I've not read the reports. So he said, you've missed the date. I said, date? That's the least thing that I wanted to see now. I went through those reports again, and it was 10 years back. So there I was looking at a man who should not have been living. For me, that was the most strange thing that I've ever seen in a report. I again went back through those reports to not believe my eyes that whatever these reports were are 10 years back. And that's when this was one of the most important turning points in my entire career, in my life, when I felt that I read through those reports and I said that I can't believe this. And that was the point. I paused for a while and I had no answers. I looked to him and I said, I can't believe this. I said, can you tell me what was it that happened? Because for me, in a conventional oncology setting, this is a closed case. It's a shut and closed case. I said, I would not be sitting and discussing about this. And that was the beginning of a story, which he told me. And believe me, that the entire time period that I spent in Pittsburgh University, I was more interested in talking to Dr. Stan and his experiences than going through the laboratory or the OTs there to know the same thing which we were doing across the world. Something in this man made a difference. So I went through the whole reports, and then I sat down with him, and that's when he spoke to me about Swami. a very interesting story about how he connected with Swami, how Swami healed his life, and how he chose himself to become an example. He was then working with many other universities to try and spend and give more important messages as a part of his service to show about how cancers can be dealt with in another way. And the stories he shared with me, the concepts he shared with me today have become the foundation of the way I treat oncology patients in my setup. It was one of the most beautiful things that he told me about, some of the most important things which Swami had told him, which he was healed after, and then later on he told me about how he was then spearheading the Sathya Sai Seva Samiti at Pittsburgh and how he was coordinating the activities there. So it was a wonderful story of that man and about what he did. And believe me, every day I would just sit with him, listen to him on what he was doing. We would sit at the breakfast and he would ask me, do you chant the Gayatri Mantra before you eat food? And I would say no. I said, I don't think there was required to chant the Gayatri Mantra. And then he would talk to me about the vibrations of the Gayatri Mantra. He would talk to me about the Vedic philosophies. As a Jewish American who taught me some of the most important principles of medicine, which for me were far-flung. The most beautiful aspects of things that he explained to me, the most important of which he said, in oncology, even in stage 4, whenever a person is looked into in survival, he said, it never reaches 0%. It is always going to 5%, 3%. But you doctors, first thing what you assume is that I am belonging to the 97%. So the moment 5-year survival is going to be 5%, you are going to assume that I belong to the 95% who are not going to live. So the first thing you will tell him is, you have 3 months, or you have 6 months, or you have things. So he says, while it is important to be scientific, it is also very important to tell the person the truth that he could be in the 95 or he could be in the 5. You have first only decided that I am going to be in the 95, who is not going to make it. And that is the first turning point. He said that I decided that I will come into the 5. And every story that he connected with me was somewhere taking us back to Swami and the discussion on what Swami had spoken to him, how Swami had healed his life. And the story would be never ending. But the principles he taught me of oncology, today I use very strongly in all my oncology patients to tell them about his example very often and tell them about how this particular aspect happens, what happens to it. It has been a wonderful journey which Dr. Stan taught me through Swami about how to actually deal with oncology patients. Whether it is compassion, whether it is love, whether it is dealing with science, and what are the things we could do. So that was one of the most important events in my life, which I thought made me look at oncology in a very different way. He is today about 73 or 74. When he was diagnosed with this cancer, I think he was 59 or 60. He still today comes to Bangalore. We both go on the treadmill together. I go for 15 minutes, he goes for 45 minutes. I still feel ashamed. And he says that every time that he walks across and his oncologist is crossing him, his oncologist wants to change his route because he feels embarrassed, because he had given him a verdict at that time that not more than 3 months. So he says life is strange, but I think, and so is Swami, and again the last laugh, that Swami had that. This is another interesting story of Swami. So this was recently, about a couple of months back, that I have to tell you that one of the, I got a call from my hospital. I was giving a lecture at Nimans. When I get a call from my hospital saying that one VIP has come to the hospital, he's got a very large thyroid tumor and we would like you to just meet him. So I was giving a lecture and I said, see, what will I have to do in this? He said, no, because the patient is not taking treatment at our hospital, but he has come here because he has to pick up the doctor who is supposed to accompany him. Time went by and I came there by about 2:30 in the afternoon to the hospital. By that time I had forgotten I have to meet this gentleman. And they told me he was a governor in one of the states of Uganda. So they told me, why don't you connect with him and speak to him? But I had forgotten about it. So I was there busy in my OPD continuing to see my patients when I was contacted again by the hospital administration to say that the gentleman whom we had spoken to you about is still there. So would you like to talk to him? I said, sure it is. So we both, me and my colleague went, we met up with him, we had a coffee, we had a chat. Apparently what happened was that his doctor, who was supposed to accompany him, who was also from his own country, had again got held up with one of the patients there in our hospital. And in the meanwhile, this gentleman had come with his secretaries, lawyers, directors and all. He got an entire team of his who had come, and Emirates had come personally to drop them. So there was a lot of buzz around in the hospital about this gentleman. So there I was sitting in my room, and he again comes to me and he says, I'm getting further delayed. So can I show you my reports? So there I was again, I saw those reports and I flipped through it and I said, and you all won't believe it, his tumor was of the size of a football by that time. It was almost about 35 centimeters, 30 to 35. It was very large. It was very large. And it sounded weird because as one of the governors of a state, this gentleman has waited for so long for it to grow, was surprising for me. Anyway, I did not ask him much questions. I went through those reports and I told him that, sir, this particular thing needs surgery. This is the plan of the surgery. I had given my opinion to him. He said, no. He says, aren't you not feeling bad that I'm not getting it operated by you? I said, no. I said, why should I feel bad about that? He said, no, because I've come all the way till here and I'm just taking your opinion and I'm just going to another center to get it operated. I said, no, everybody has a particular place where he will be healed and where he will do well. I don't decide that the Almighty decides. So why should I determine who and where you should go and when you should get operated? That is not in my hands to decide all of this. So hearing this, the man got all the more disturbed. He said, this is really not the way I'm expecting answers. So I said, sir, this is the way I speak. And then he said, do you know why I have come here? I said, not sure. I said, I have been only told you have come here. Why you have come here, I have not been told. He said, but I would like to share a story with you. I said, yes, please share it with me. He said, I have a spiritual master, an enlightened master in my country who has been guiding me. And he said, for the last 20 years, he has told me, don't touch this tumor because you are going to die. And I said, okay. And I said, you have listened to him? He said, yes, I have listened to him. I said, okay. I said, so now? He said, last 3 days back, he suddenly got up in the midst of his meditation and he told me, now go and get it operated. He said, I also got irritated when he told me, because last 20 years he has made it grow this big. And now suddenly he's telling me, now go and get it operated. He says, I am also getting irritated with him. I told him, why did you make me wait for so long? When it was smaller only, you could have asked me to. He said, no, the time was not right. He said, this is ridiculous. And he argued with his master apparently. But he told him, now go and get it operated. Now, this gentleman apparently told him, the spiritual master told this gentleman that, my patient asked him, so where do I go and get it operated? He had planned to go because he was earlier working in USA in the Wall Street. So he was working with them and he said, I would want to go to New York and get the thing operated. He said, no, go to India. So this fellow said, what is this thing about India? He says, I don't know where to go in India. And India is a country. Where do I mean I go in India? So his master said, you don't look for the surgeon will look for you. He said, this is the most ridiculous thing my master has told me, that I'm supposed to go to a country called India and supposed to then keep wandering around there and the surgeon will come searching for me. But then anyway, my master always talks in riddles, he never talks straightforward to me. So I decided I will call up my contacts, took some guidance, and they told me that All India Institute was the best center for me to go and get my surgery done. So there I decided that I'm going to go to All India Institute. And all arrangements were done for his entire team to stay there. For whatever strange reason, the doctor who was supposed to accompany them was stuck in my hospital. Which is why he had to change the visa. And he said, instead of the doctor coming to Delhi, I want to be ensuring that the doctor surely comes with us. Because without him, I don't want to get the surgery done. So tragically, he came to Bangalore, to this particular hospital, and he's saying that as I'm talking to you, I'm feeling maybe you are the person I'm supposed to be getting operated by. So he said, can I talk to my master? And I said, yeah, please call your master up. So he calls his master up for my OPD. And he says, there is a very strange feeling I'm getting sitting in this place, that this man over here standing in front of me is talking something very strange, and I'm somehow feeling that maybe that thing that you told me of surgeon may look for me is coming true now. So there he was, and his master told him that I did not ever tell you to go to Delhi. I told you he will look for you, at that time you will come to know. He says, this is the place I want you to do, get the surgery done. Now it was very strange about how this thing happened, but this person decided to get his surgery there. Towards the end, after the entire saga was over, when he saw Swami's photo in my room, he came and told me, he said, I want to share with you a story that many years back, when we were traveling, me and my spiritual master were traveling to a particular place, he suddenly stopped his car at a particular point. And then he showed me a house. And he said, this was the place where the Universal Master came and stayed. And he said, this was the place where he said, this particular place is worth all the real estate in Uganda if somebody could get this place. And that was the place which Swami stayed, apparently, when he visited to Uganda. And that was one of the only countries he had visited. I don't know about this, but it was he who told me that it was Sathya Sai Baba who had actually come there, and he shared some connect about Sathya Sai Baba. And his master had apparently great regards to Sathya Sai Baba, and the whole story somehow again got connected to Swami. This is another very interesting story. I was asked by my hospital to go to Kenya for a meeting. So there I was heading for Kenya, planned for a Kenya meeting. And one of my colleagues connects and tells us that, since you all are going anyway to Kenya, Somalia is a country close by and they are going through a lot of problems, a lot of difficulties, there are issues, many cancer patients there are being ignored and neglected. Could you go there and help some of them? So the first thing that spontaneously came out of my mouth was, yeah, surely, what's the problem? And I just want to share a very quick story on Somalia. So Somalia was one of the most dangerous countries, and when I reached there, one day before I reached, the building next to the place where I was staying, the hotel where I was staying, was the UN building that was bombed one day before it. So there were tanks moving on the roads. It was one of the most crazy scenarios I've ever seen in my life. Now, when we reached there, we realized that the building next to us was bombed, and this was the next target, and we are supposed to stay there for 4 days. So every floor had a man with an AK-47 standing in every floor. So we did not have waiters or this one. We had army men inside, and outside the hotel was a tank, with bazookas, and it was the most unimaginable scene that I would have faced in my life. In my OPD that I ran, I had 2 people with 2 Sten guns standing next to me, because they said that even the patient can kidnap you. And I said, this is such a strange scenario. So there I was in Somalia in that kind of a thing, running an OPD. So every night we would sit in the terrace and we would hear guns firing. So a very unusual situation, and by the end of that 4th day, our hearts were already weak and we really didn't know whether we'll make it or not. And all my other colleagues were getting even more anxious and depressed. And, it would happen that the next morning I'm supposed to leave back to Kenya. So I'm supposed to go back to Kenya and again get relieved, and the doubt was whether we'll reach or not. In fact, my colleagues told that the hospital has only done a one-way ticket because they were doubtful that we'll come back, to save money unnecessarily instead of wasting money. But anyways, we were all determined to come back, so we said, let's try our best lot and come back. So there we were in the airport waiting, and the flight got delayed by about 4-5 hours. Now what we didn't know in this was, before you enter Kenya, there is another place they take you to, a no man's land, where they land you and then they frisk you and check you again for your identity, because a lot of the times there are terrorists who are actually trying to infiltrate into Kenya through Somalia. So we were all suddenly taken in the, you could see from your flight landing that there was only jungle, and in the midst there was a small bald patch where they landed us, in the midst of the jungle, and that was a place. And then they put us through a checking in that small airport there. Now, I was reading Swami's book, and this was a very strange thing. I was reading this book, and in this particular book, I was reading this particular page, which read about sometimes how Swami enters people and exits doing his work to help people or to serve. It was a very strange page that I was reading, and I was flipping through that page, and I was reading that particular paragraph. When the flight crash landed, it suddenly hit the tarmac as though it was going to crash, and there was a strange sense of disturbance in the entire flight, as though it wobbled around and then landed. And then there was an announcement done that there is a technical problem in this flight, so you'll have to wait at the airport till the time the clearance is done, and in the meanwhile we will be doing through a security check. So we had the ambassador of Egypt, we had many other people in our flight. So we all got down, and as we were walking towards the tarmac, we were about, in our group, we were about 6 to 7 people. So 4 doctors and the 3 people who were locals, who were actually helping us to reach safely in one piece to Kenya. So now as we were walking, there was another flight that had landed, and the pilot from the other flight was walking towards this flight. Now it was a very strange 70-degree angle. He is walking towards this flight, we are walking in towards the airport. He suddenly turned, and this is a very strange thing, that he suddenly turned, walked towards me and said, "Don't board that flight." This is all he told me. He said, "Don't board that flight, come with me." Now, I found it so strange. I said, "This is so stupid." I said, "What is this pilot and why did he suddenly come and talk to me like this?" And I couldn't explain this, but my colleagues all looked at me with a very funny stare, saying, "How do you know this fellow?" And I said, "I don't know this gentleman." I said, "He just walked to me." He said, "What is he talking to you, saying, 'Don't board this flight, come with me'?" He said, "I mean, come on, no stranger comes and tells you, 'Come with me' like this." I said, "I really don't know this gentleman and I'm not able to place him correctly." But anyways, I said, for whatever he had said, now we were inside the airport. Now inside the airport, we were going through our security checks, we were done that, and then we got to know that there would be an indefinite delay because the front axle was cut off that airport, of that flight, of that aircraft. So there I was wondering that now how are we going to reach? And I have fixed an appointment at, at 3 o'clock with the Cancer Society of Kenya. Interestingly, they call me up before that and tell me, "Can we have the meeting fixed at 6 o'clock instead of 3? And I said, "What will I do for 3 hours? Because I'm going to be reaching early and then I prefer not to waste time." So I was thinking of having more meetings. But they said, no, we'll have it at 6 o'clock. Now there I was getting this flight delayed and I was thinking, I'm going to miss even that 6 o'clock meeting. But for whatever it happens, we were waiting inside the airport when they gave us this information that it's going to be an indefinite delay. So there we were getting panicky and worried, saying, "What do we do now?" Now in the midst, I remembered this fellow telling me, "Come with me." Now I thought, I can come with this fellow, but how do I enter that flight? Now I can see it from a distance that it's parked there. Our flight is in this side and we are all jailed inside this airport here. So I go and walk to one of the people who's working there and I tell them that I want to talk to that the pilot of that aircraft. And they look at me strangely, saying, "What kind of a request is this? You want to talk to the pilot of that aircraft?" So I get a blatant refusal, saying, "Sir, you can't be going and talking to all those people. It's not allowed." Then I wait for another 15 minutes, have a cup of coffee, and then I wonder again, what do I have to do? I have to try meeting this fellow because he's told me something. So I again make an attempt. This time I go and meet another fellow who's actually walking around there with the luggage, one of the luggage porters. And I tell him that, "See, that man, that the pilot there is my friend. Can you just go and tell him that I'm waiting over here? He has told me to meet him and that I should come with him." So he says, "Can you tell me his name?" I said, "I don't know his name." He says, "Then how is he your friend?" I said, "I don't know, but he's my friend." I said, "No." I said, "Don't ask me explanations. Can you just tell him? Tell him that so-and-so is waiting here for him." And I didn't know how to explain this whole funny story. So there he was. He actually agreed to do the stupid act of going there and telling him that your friend whose name you don't know and he doesn't know your name is waiting for you there. So he went there and he told him. And strangely, the pilot comes. And I'm telling you, this is not a fairy tale. This actually happened here. This is actually happening there. So the pilot comes walking to us and looks at me and says, "I told you, you have to come with me." And I said, "Yeah, you've told me to come with you, but this is not a bus stand that I can come directly there and I can walk into your flight and sit with you." So I said, "How do I do it?" So he says, "Oh yes." He says, "You need tickets." I said, "Yes, we need tickets. We don't have it. And this flight is going to get, we don't know what's going to be the fate of this flight." She says, "Okay." So he tells them, book 6 tickets for these guys, book a ticket for this guy. I said, "No, I have 6 more people with me. I can't leave them and go. They have to come with me." She says, "Okay." He says, 6 more tickets. He tells the guy, he says, "Book tickets." He says, "There's no ticket reservation counter. It's this particular place is only for security checks. It's not for ticket reservations." He says, "Oh yes." He says, "No tickets here." So he says, "Okay, let me do one thing." He makes a call to Kenya and he tells them, "Can you block 6 tickets for these people over here? And once they land there, we will give you the tickets. Now they can come with me." So I mean, this is absolutely weird and strange. So six tickets are being booked in Kenya, and we have to fly from here to Kenya. And once we reach there, they will give us the tickets. So my colleagues looked at me and said, "Something absolutely wonky is going on here. This is not right." So I said, "Yeah." I said, "If that is possible, nothing like it." I said, we'll agree with that. And we were like very happy. We said, "If this kind of an option." Now my colleagues and the locals who were accompanying us got more curious, saying, "How do you know this fellow?" I said, "I really don't know this fellow." I said, "But I think you must be knowing, because what is he doing over here? Why is he doing all these things?" So he calls up Kenya, he reserves 6 tickets for us, and then he says, "Okay, come and board the flight." And then he goes back. Now there we are, and now the tickets are supposed to be ready without the tickets, but we are supposed to be having the tickets. So I said, now that we are having the tickets, we tell the airport authority manager that please allow us to board the flight. They were not allowing us. Anyway, the bottom line was we are not allowed to again board the flight. Now there was the last announcement done of that flight to take off, and the African Express was taking off. So there we were saying that we've lost our chance, and now we can't again call the pilot because the engine was started, and there was the final boarding card was announced and it was about to take off. So there we were all upset waiting, and 5 minutes later we realized that the flight is not taking off. The African Express flight is not taken off. It's still there on the tarmac, but it's not taken off. The engine is on, and we again see the pilot coming back. Again the pilot comes back and he looks at me and says, I told you to come, why are you still not coming? I said, yeah, but these guys are not allowing us. He says, oh, that's ridiculous. And he again tells the airport authorities, this is my job, these are my people, you let them come. So we were 6 people who boarded the flight after the flight's last boarding announcements were announced, and after the engine was started, when the pilot got down and again came back to again take us and go. Now this time my colleagues felt this is the most ridiculous thing, and they said, you have to know this fellow, otherwise he would not have done this. I said, I really don't know. He said, where on earth does it happen that the flight started and like a bus driver, he comes down and again takes you all and again goes back? And we were the 6 people who boarded the flight, and the stairs were again got for us, and we again boarded the flight. It was very strange. Now to make matters worse, by that time my colleagues stopped talking to me. They kind of thought something suspiciously wrong is going on here. He's trying to hide something from us. And I kept convincing them, I really don't know this fellow, but I think he's a lovely gentleman. Just look at the way he's helping us. They said, but there has to be some reason. Now the locals who know that language are saying there's some connection. We don't know what connection he's having, but something is there which we are not able to understand. And it's beyond money. There's something else going on here. But I still wondered, that chapter that I read where he comes, does the works and goes out. I really don't know, but I'll tell you, this is a very special experience I had, and I share this with many of my friends who all feel it's the most crazy story they've heard, because they can't really believe something like this can happen in an airport. So that was Project Somalia for me, and I want to end this thing by telling you all, I reached my hotel exactly at Stanley Sarovar, exactly at 6 p.m. Exactly at 6 p.m. when the meeting was scheduled, I reached the place. And that perfection could only have been directed by Swami and nobody else. I'm coming to the last 1 or 2 slides. So this is something that, we were working in one of the villages in Madapanalli, where my friend shared this story with me. So he shared the story with me that in one of those village visits we would go house to house talking to people about tobacco de-addiction. So we would go house to house telling them that they should quit tobacco, we would do counseling and other things. In that particular village, my friend saw a little girl wandering around there and who was playing. So he went and he bought a chocolate to her and he gave it to her. A single chocolate he gave it to her. He shared this story with me saying that a month later when he came to Parthi, when Swami was in his physical form, Swami called him and showed the chocolate and said, I really liked it. And Swami told him that whenever you give something with love, it directly reaches me. I found that very beautiful. That one single line which he told me, I found it so beautiful that Swami called him, showed that chocolate which he gave to that girl, apparently who was craving very badly for it, and he bought the chocolate for her and gave it to her. Swami showed the chocolate and again said that when you give something with love, I directly receive it. So I would like to conclude. It's a Valentine Day today, and there could be nothing better than this for saying love all, serve all. And this is a quote that I always believe, that we are doctors who are amusing the patient when Swami is doing the cure. So we need to continue doing the amusing work. Thank you very much. Sairam.